History happened everywhere.
The verdict.
This is our after-show podcast where we look back at the most recent episode 101, Psychology in Cambodia during the Neogene. So if you haven't listened to that, go back and check it out, or else you'll find spoilers ahead. Is there anything you would like to process and announce to the community, Ryan, as by way of processing your trauma?
I'll do a whole series of podcasts on that, I think.
Yes, a 20-episode podcast of Ryan's testimony.
Well, it'd be quite good to send people to sleep.
We could call it Ryan Wines.
Ryan Wines?
Hello, my name is Pete Goddard and I am here in the HHE studio with the bear in a man suit to my man in a bear suit. It's Mr. Ryan Weir.
Rawr! Get me some honey.
You're a terrifying visage, my friend, in your bear form.
I'm a little grizzly.
Hey! And of course, we are joined as ever by the deflated dirigible of dourness, the judge himself, Mr. Paul Dersley.
Very deflated.
Happy New Year, Judge.
Happy New Year? New Year was ages ago. Oh, you mean Chinese New Year?
Sure.
Close enough.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Now, Ryan, I've got to tell you that last week I was savaged by a sun bear wearing a lab coat, and the trauma has caused me to forget everything that we talked about. So I just wonder if you could remind me what we did. What did we cover?
Yeah, I can absolutely do that. When would you like me to do it?
I'd like you to do it now.
In this mind-expanding episode, we set off on a Freudian trip through time and history in a Neogene region that would one day become Cambodia. We uncovered the mysteries of Angkor, took a spin through the streets of Phnom Penh, marvelled at Cambodia's elephant-mediated divorce courts, and pulled back the curtain on a wild sect of vampire-fighting monks. From there, we took a sobering tour through Cambodia's collective trauma, from the grandeur of its early empire to the devastation wrought through the 20th century. Then Pete got down to business, introducing us to some tech-savvy sun bears who are capable of recognising facial expressions and even ordering their dinner on an iPad. And finally, I introduced Dersley, a lonely Khoratpithecus who lived 9 million years ago and whose psychological report suggests that he suffered from a serious case of prehistoric social anxiety. There was all this and more in our exciting and educational first episode of 2025. It was psychology, it was Cambodia during the Neogene, it was good to be back. That was last week's episode done, summarised nicely. Nice one, son. Now we're over to a young Dersley who's gonna tell you what he thought of thee. He'll take you apart without any care. He's the lovely Paul Dersley. The lovely Paul Dersley.
Ah, yes, of course, it's all come flooding back to me. A challenging episode, brilliantly woven together in rather different ways. I thought it was fantastic, but my opinion is irrelevant, Ryan, because as you know, we're here for the opinion of just one man, Judge Dersley. So, Paul, before we go on with the verdict, can you give us your first impressions of the episode?
No.
Okay. It could be you naming the Khoratpithecus Dersley, Ryan, maybe coming back to bite us right now.
I was wondering if that was going to come up.
We'll talk about that later.
I thought maybe he might see it as an honour.
Let's find out later, eh? Is it a part of the world you're familiar with, Paul?
No, I've not been there. Although I suppose the events of the 70s there were about the first international story I can sort of really remember was a big story. Sort of, I can't remember any of the Vietnam War or any of that, but I can remember Pol Pot et al.
I guess it'll influence your view of the country.
No, it certainly wouldn't. You know, that's, 50 years ago now.
But do you not fear you would be identified immediately as an intellectual?
Well, surely they would love to have intellectuals now. That was then, this is now.
That's true. They've changed their tune quite significantly, haven't they?
I think you should go, Paul. I could quite easily see you clambering over the rocks of Angkor. looking to solve the mysteries.
In his pith helmet.
Well, I would like to go there because the site is enormous, isn't it?
Truly enormous, yeah. I watched a documentary about it the other day, and apparently ancient aliens did build it. So, fact.
Why would they be ancient aliens? Wouldn't they just be aliens?
Well, apparently it was built using a technology that was not available at the time, so it can only have been aliens.
I see.
Also, there's a lot of engravings on Angkor Wat.
That don't look like spacemen or space capsules or command modules.
They don't, that's true, but one of the engravings is rather unusual. That is because it clearly depicts a Stegosaurus.
Clearly depicts a Stegosaurus.
Genuinely, it looks a lot like a Stegosaurus to me.
You're going to have to put this one on social media, my friend,
I
because
will.
I am sceptical as heck.
I really will, because it genuinely looks like it. It looks like the big old reptile with plates on its back.
So it could be just a crocodile with big bits on its back.
Or it could be the history of a man who was travelling across country vending plates off the back of a camel. And he had to display plates across the display plates.
Like at a fun fair. Yeah. Knock the plates down and win a prize.
Well, he wanted people to see his wares, so rather than just stack them on the back of the camel, he sellotaped them in a row alongside, so it ended up looking a little bit, but not exactly, like a dinosaur.
Well, anyway, I think you should go, Paul, and I will come with you.
Will you indeed? So is it going to be funded by HHE?
We could cover your bus fare to the airport. Is that any good?
I don't go to the airport by bus, I can assure you.
We did talk about the darker times of Cambodia and how it's a bit nicer today. And I wanted to bring something a bit more positive to this episode because obviously I had to cover this history section, which was pretty hard going, I think it's fair to say.
Well, I think your Pol Pot noodle did quite well at lightening the tone. Apart from the massacring of millions of people, it was quite funny.
It's always a question of when and how can you laugh at something, and it's a fine line, isn't it? But
yes.
We try and tread on the side of making it clear that we are not supporters of genocide, I suppose. I don't know what more we can do other than never make a joke about anything, which doesn't feel satisfactory to me.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to bring something positive to the podcast, and instead I just ended up going down a rabbit hole that was unrelated. But nevertheless, I'll tell you how I got there. I Googled Good News Cambodia.
Okay, I like this already.
Right? I thought, well, let's bring something a bit more upbeat and light and positive. Now, what came back was a news article from February 2023 in which, quote, a trove of precious jewellery from Cambodia's past has been repatriated after surfacing in London. So this was quite nice, I thought. So the 77 artefacts, I guess, from Angkor were returned to the country, and they were believed to have been trafficked from the country during the Khmer Rouge period. The trove was quite nice. It was gold and precious metal, kind of crowny and necklacey looking things from the pre-Angkorian and Angkorian period. There was comment by the Cambodian Ministry of Culture and Fine Arts, which said, thanks very much. This is all part of positivity and happiness. Then I found out that the items came from the estate of a recently deceased art trafficker called Douglas Latchford. And this was the thread I tugged at because he was known for many years as an expert antiques appraiser, but was later found out to have worked alongside the Khmer Rouge, trafficking hundreds of artefacts from the country. And he died in 2020 before he could be convicted of antiques trafficking.
Wow, okay.
This guy lived just quite the life. He was born in Mumbai in 1931 under the British Raj. He moved to Bangkok in 1956 where he starts a drug distribution company. He's also at the same time a devotee of bodybuilding and becomes the honorary president of the Thai Bodybuilding Association. And then in the 70s he becomes this leading supplier of Cambodian art, selling to museums, the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And even then he was obviously genuinely a lover of art because apparently he kept the best pieces for himself. Were worth about $50 million.
Oh my God.
What a life. From Mumbai to Bangkok to Cambodia, drugs, bodybuilding, rare artifacts. Someone needs to make a movie of this guy's life.
Well, look, honestly, Pete, I've got to say, that was a hard history section to write, wasn't it? They have a heavy history.
And it's the period of the Khmer Rouge was only a short period, but it's so defining that it's impossible to not talk about. And, you've got to talk about these things in order to bring them to light and make sure we don't see them happening again.
And Paul, as you were saying, yes, it happened 50 years ago, but, they are still trying to recover from the effects of that genocide today. And one of the things that sort of a standout reason for why the country is still suffering from it is the legacy of landmines. So I did a little bit of research into this because I was stunned to discover that during the 1970s, 6 million landmines were planted across the country. Now, to put that into perspective, those landmines cover an area of around 2,000 square kilometres. That's roughly the size of Luxembourg or twice the size of New York City. Basically, like if you were to detonate all 6 million of those landmines simultaneously, the total energy released would be around 5 terajoules. That's enough energy to power 125,000 households for an entire year. Roughly 1,200 tons of TNT, or the equivalent of a small tactical nuclear bomb.
All you got to do is dig them all up and put them in a pile, surely, and then lob a match on.
Well, some have been dug up, but a lot of them still remain, and many of those haven't actually detonated. In fact, over 50 casualties every year are caused by landmines, and that's caused Cambodia to become the highest amputee rate in the world. Over 40,000 people living with landmine-related injuries.
That is shocking. I'm reminded of our Queen of Hearts, Princess Diana. She was a keen advocate for the removal of landmines, wasn't she? They really are devastating and ongoing, lingering effect of war. War can end, but these things stay around for years, decades even.
They're very cynical weapons as well.
They are. And, there's the psychological aspect to it too, right? That, it's every step you take, you don't know if it's going to be your last. And it's not just humans that are affected. There's lots of cases of cows and dogs that step on landmines in Cambodia. In fact, there are some elephants in national parks which have actually learned to actively avoid some areas that they know where elephants have been injured or killed by landmines. And apparently, they've even started teaching their young to tread more carefully.
Wow.
But out of the devastation, something else has emerged. There are some survivors of landmine explosions that have come together to form musical groups. The most famous being the Cambodian Landmine Victims Band. And they gather together in public areas and play music using instruments made from decommissioned weapons and landmines. And here's some of the music. I thought I'd play some now.
All right.
There you go. That's the Cambodian Landmine Victims Band there.
Interesting.
That is definitely the best music made out of landmines I've ever heard.
Yeah, that's true. Now, one victim also set up a landmine museum called the Cambodian Landmine Museum. It was created by a former child soldier called Aki Ra, and he was injured by a landmine and decided that he was going to dedicate the rest of his life to educating people about the effects of landmines, something obviously he has first-hand experience of, not just from his injuries, but also because he has personally removed over 50,000 landmines by hand himself.
I want to go to the gift shop. Have you got any claymores?
But I want to end on some element of hope. That is, the Cambodian government has set a goal to be landmine free by the end of 2025.
Oh, that's soon.
You might notice some element of skepticism in my voice, and that is because landmine clearance is not cheap. I looked into it, and a single landmine costs just $3, whereas the cost to remove a single landmine costs around $300 to $1,000, which means that the government is not willing to spend that amount of money to fix the problem. In fact, even with the latest technology, the clearance project's aim is considered, and I quote, grossly unrealistic, and is actually expected to take decades.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fair.
But there is some help from an unlikely source, and that is rats. Apparently, the Cambodians are starting to enlist the help of the African giant pouched rat, which has an incredible sense of smell, and it can be trained to detect explosives in landmines. They're called hero rats in Cambodia. They weigh around 1 kilo, which is too light to trigger the mines, and it's said that a single rat can clear an area the size of a tennis court in 30 minutes, while a human with a metal detector would take 4 days.
Wow.
So anyway, it's a massive challenge, and there are organisations out there like the Halo Trust doing their bit to make sure that the country gets some help, and we wish them all the best.
Absolutely. Get rid of those mines, guys, but do not sell them back to anyone. This is not a recycling opportunity.
All right, so look, we didn't get much time in the episode to discuss the history of psychology, quite literally because I cut the whole section out, didn't I, Pete?
You did indeed. It's a good section, but we just had too much stuff.
But in summary, though, psychology is the study of mind and behavior. It's proper science. Humans have always been doing it. Early man was doing it. He was looking at his members of his tribe and wondering what they were up to and, whether they were going to kill him or eat all his food. The ancient Egyptians tried to find a link between thoughts and behavior, and they reasoned that the brain was just sort of filler, like foam peanuts that you get in packing.
Packing peanuts.
Yeah, exactly. Ancient Greek philosophers like Aristotle, they knew that the brain was doing more of the work until around the 17th century, and we meet a guy called René Descartes who said, "I think, therefore I am," which was part of a deep philosophical question about whether the mind and the body were actually separate things or one and the same. The 19th century rocks around, and there's a German guy called Wilhelm Wundt, known as the father of modern psychology. He opens a laboratory so that he can analyse his own thoughts.
That is incredibly conceited, isn't it?
I don't care what anybody else thinks.
Yeah. The Americans then pick up the ball. They introduce a thing called functionalism, and that looks at why we act the way that we do. And it asks questions like, why are we afraid of thunderstorms?
Well, I'm not afraid of thunderstorms. I used to love thunderstorms.
Ah, bless you. And then, of course, the poster boy for psychology appears. He thought that little girls have penis envy and little boys wanted to murder their dad and have sex with their mum. Sigmund Freud.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, now today, a lot of people disagree with a lot of what Freud wrote about, and it's true that the science of psychology has moved on. For example, it's considered inaccurate today to suggest that women are mutilated and less developed men who should have babies and submit to their husbands. But that's what Freud thought.
I don't know. It sounds like an opinion that might be on the rise given the current climate.
Yeah, maybe see that posted on X somewhere.
Well, you should see. You should watch the documentary called The Handmaid's Tale.
Yes.
Now, some of his findings were born from research into the mind of his own teenage daughter. He subjected her to a series of dream analytics throughout her teenage years, which he said revealed her repressed desires.
That's worse than the other thing you said, I think.
It sure is,
Yes,
yeah.
it
Now,
is.
perhaps unrelatedly, his daughter, called Anna, remained single her entire life and celibate, although was rumoured to be a closeted lesbian. Freud said that that was not the case, though, and that she had only remained celibate because she knew that sexual activity would weaken her intellect.
Right.
Yeah. One of the things that I did discover was that Freud was a massive cokehead too. He loved using cocaine.
Well, it helps the old mind turn over, doesn't it?
Yeah, he loved it so much he started to use it in his therapy sessions. He called it a miracle cure for depression, pain and digestion. And he knew this because he first started experimenting on his fiancée before eventually getting his best friend, a guy called Ernst von Fleischl-Marxau, hooked with the intention of ridding him of morphine addiction. Now, did that go well or did it not go well?
Well, I think
Yeah.
not well.
So heroin to cocaine.
It did not go well, you're right. Yeah, needless to say, it didn't work giving him cocaine. And in fact, poor old Ernst became the first documented cocaine addict, eventually developing horrific hallucinations, clawing at his own skin and dying in agony.
Should have stuck to the morphine.
Now, what's kind of remarkable about Freud is that he actually stole the ideas of other people too. These weren't even his ideas. He stole other psychologists' theories and said that they were his own. He popularized them and then just never gave them any credit. And one of the other things that I discovered about him was that he's terrified of the supernatural. He became obsessed with his own death, even refusing to write his own autobiography because he thought it would bring bad luck and speed up his death.
Wow.
Yeah, and in a way, maybe he was right to be afraid, because when he did die, it was because he had cancer of the jaw, which was the result of a life of chain-smoking cigars. Now, the cancer spread through his jaw, but he tried to fix that several times by having sections of his jaw removed during multiple surgeries. And so much so of his jaw was removed that he actually had a weird metal jaw fitted to replace it, which made breathing difficult. So he had a special tube constructed so that he could continue to keep smoking cigars.
You know what'll make this a situation better? More cigars.
More cigars.
Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar.
Yeah. Anyway, the surgeries left him in constant agonising pain, such that eventually in 1939 he begged his doctor to administer a lethal morphine overdose, which effectively euthanized him, and he died. Yet, despite all of this, Freud still manages to be one of the most famous names in psychology. So, there you go. Analyse that, Pete.
Well, and one of the few people to meet both Bill and Ted. Oh, dear. Sorry.
Sigmund Freud, more like, am I right?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, Charles, what brings you here today?
Well, Doc, I guess life's just really hard at the moment. I'm just not sure I can cope with it all.
I see.
So I guess I'm just looking for some guidance. I'm hoping you could help.
Well, probably not, no.
I'm sorry, what?
Well, it's just you are what we in the profession call a lost cause.
Oh.
Yeah, a no-hoper. A gigantic waste of time and therapy.
Oh, right.
Yeah, some people are just beyond helping, I'm afraid.
Really?
Yeah, in fact, I think you should probably just leave.
But I've booked for the hour.
Yeah, but, I mean, can you really afford it?
Not really, no.
Yeah, see? A no-hoper.
Right, well, is there anything I can do?
Of course. I mean, have you thought about ending it all?
What?
You know, the old tall building nosedive? Toss a toaster in the bath. Quick game of race the train, that sort of thing.
What? No, are you insane?
Well, I am mad, but I'm mad about you wasting my time.
That's a horrible thing to say. I can't believe you talk to your clients like this. People come in here vulnerable in need of help, and you just... Oh, hang on, I get it.
What?
Well, this is like a technique, isn't it?
What is?
You being all mean and tough, like some kind of reverse psychology therapy?
No, I just don't like you. A bit like your father did, I expect.
My father?
Yeah, I bet he didn't want you around either.
Well, if you must know, my dad was very loving.
Fine, well, then your mum then.
No, Mum adores me, so wrong again.
No, wrong again. God, you are such an idiot.
Oh, yeah, well, I'll have you know I graduated with first-class honours from a flagship university.
Did you?
I did, actually.
And what did you study? Being annoying?
Oh, do you know what? I'm done with this. I don't need to sit here and listen to this. I have a good degree, a decent job, good friends. Why on earth would I waste my time coming here if all you're going to do is insult me?
Whatever.
You know, I don't even care if it's supposed to be some sort of deranged reverse therapy technique.
It's really not.
Yeah, of course it's not. You're just saying everything a therapist shouldn't say. What are you doing? Pushing me outside my comfort zone, I suppose. Breaking down my psychological defences. But next time you'll throw in some Freud and just tell me, I don't know, I want to have sex with my mother.
Do you?
No!
You sure? Because you do look the type.
Oh my God!
You've got beady little eyes.
Anything else?
Yeah, you smell.
Great. Well, thanks for nothing, Doc. All you've done is insult me. And you know what? I will live a happy life, safe in the knowledge that I'm not some two-bit quack shrink who preys on vulnerable people for cash. I'm leaving now, and you know what? I won't be back.
I really should stop curing people. It's terrible for business.
Okay, Ryan, I've got something to please you, but I'm going to dress it up as something to please Paul Dersley.
Okay. Please me, Pete. Please me.
What about the psychology of ghosts?
Yay!
Now, I happened upon in my studies a thing called Ting Mong. Mm-hmm. They look kind of like scarecrows, right? So you dress them up and they're supposed to look like people. Mm-hmm. They're a very traditional thing, apparently. And the point of them is you have a scarecrow and you're not there to scare birds away. They're there to frighten away ghosts and evil spirits.
Okay.
Now, apparently you don't see loads of Ting Mong. They're a traditional thing, but they're not out and about all the time. But apparently when things get tough, you start to see them more and more and more. And people think, I'm going to lean on the things I know to scare away any bad thing. So even if it's a well-known and understood thing, such as the coronavirus pandemic.
Oh, okay.
What they found was, even though everyone knew it was a disease and broadly disease is understood as being a thing, during the pandemic, Ting Mong suddenly became absolutely everywhere. This photographer said, illness effigies are popping up everywhere in the Cambodian countryside. They're meant to fool the spirits into making the effigy sick instead of the household.
Yeah, clever.
It's probably as useful as injecting yourself with domestos, as somebody said.
Some people have said, and and we do not recommend. Yes, so Ryan, if you want to protect yourself from ghosts and spirits, get yourself a kind of scarecrow, but this is an important feature. You have to give him a weapon.
What?
I think it depends on the region. Different regions have different traditions, but certainly in one area.
They've got a few landmines to spare.
Well,
Yeah, that's true. Give each one a
push him
landmine.
around. Yes, that's it. So you can protect yourself, Ryan, from ghosts, and more to the point, Paul, the psychology of these traditions mean people feel safer and more secure by having a Ting Mong in their back garden with a mock AK-47 to drive away the ghosts.
Yeah, well, it's just like any type of superstition, isn't it? I suppose you'd call it a faith. They find it soothing.
The bare minimum, it gives you something to do and a sense of agency. I have done something against this otherwise obscure and difficult to comprehend enemy or foe of mine.
Yeah, it gives you a sense of power.
Although it'll have no consequence whatsoever.
But it makes you feel better.
Psychological, isn't it?
Well, but the thing is, you might be out and catch it when you're putting your Mong up.
Yes, I suppose. I did say they were mostly in the countryside, I suppose, so you've got a certain amount of natural distancing to be had.
All the story of ghosts, though, I'm more interested in how you protect yourself from a rogue shadow that's wandering around without a body.
Your Ting Mong might do the job as well.
Do you think so?
I think so.
Okay, good.
What about vampires?
Well, the monks have taken care of them.
Yeah, there's none left.
All right, guys, this is it. We've come to the end of the line and it's time to step into the dock and prepare to face the people's judge.
For therapy.
For therapy. Judge Dersley, are you ready to give your kind and therapeutic verdict?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
And how does that make you feel, Pete?
we'll find out shortly. Well, defendants, we must rise.
I'm risen.
Your Honour, as usual, we must start proceedings by asking for your verdict on factual content.
Well, I didn't really know a vast amount about Cambodia, apart from, as I said, the mid-70s.
So does that mean you've learnt a lot then?
Sounds like a lot of factual content.
What about ninja monks?
Vampire hunting monks, actually.
Oh, they were. Sorry, I must have fallen asleep during that bit. So yes, I think you had some factoids about Cambodia. There wasn't enough about the Neogene, I think.
So what is your verdict then, Paul, on factual content?
For factual content, Peter, I shall give you a C+.
All right, that's solid. I like that.
For a
I'll take
difficult
C+.
episode, I think that's pretty acceptable. Okay, the next factor to consider is entertainment value. Did you find you had a great time? You were laughing, you were fascinated, you were thrilled? Was it a roller coaster ride?
It was definitely a roller coaster ride. I was shocked for a significant part of it.
Why? Why were you shocked?
Well, we'll come on to that later.
Oh dear.
Oh, no.
But it was entertaining in the sense that I'd missed it for a couple of weeks, so it was most amusing to groan at your sketches. So, ask your question.
Entertainment value, verdict please.
I think I shall give you, for entertainment value, B-.
And he said he missed us, Ryan. He said he missed us.
I know. Yeah.
And finally, the ever unknowable Dersley factor. I'm scared about this one. What did you feel, Dersley factor-wise, Paul?
Yes, I think there has to be a lot of reading between the lines for this episode. First of all, I'll give you the score, which is E-.
Right?
Does it go that low?
I think it can. I think it did.
Oh. So what you're saying is it was a gamble that did not pay off.
Correct.
You had a song and everything. I mean, Dersley the Khoratpithecus had a song.
When you first said it, I smiled, and every subsequent time that smile got less and less and less, and turned into more of a scowl. And I was sort of trying to read between the lines of what you actually thought about me.
It was the solo grooming that I liked.
Okay, so an E- for Dersley factor and a solid reprimand from the judge. I think that's fair. Okay, guys, we've reached the final verdict. Now, before the judge passes his ruling, Ryan, you have an opportunity to enter a plea. If you choose to do so, please do it now.
I think you might need to.
Okay, this was our first episode after an extended period away, and it was a token of our love to our audience and to you that you got a solid mention throughout this episode.
Oh boy, we're in trouble.
You haven't done very well on that, have you?
All right. Well, Your Honour, the defendant stands before you. Have you reached a verdict?
Yes, I have.
Okay, then respectfully I ask for your final ruling.
So, I should give you a D+.
Yay.
Oh dear.
And we're off to a strong start to the year with a D+. Well, I suppose we've got a platform from which to rise there, Ryan.
Exactly. Can't wait for our next episode, First Aid in Sudan, featuring Dersley the paramedic.
I don't think we've learned anything, have we? Well, nevertheless, that is our show for this week. If you would like to get in touch about any of the things we've talked about on the show, or if you just want to say hi, reach out on social media or through our website, hhepodcast.com, or you can just send us an email at peteandryan@hhepodcast.com.
Yeah, that's right. We would love to hear from you. And you never know, you might end up featured on a future show.
And one way to definitely feature on a future episode is to rate and review the show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. A recommendation there helps bring the show to new listeners, which we would love.
Now, if you're on Mastodon, Facebook, Instagram, or X, you can find us at HHE Podcast. And if you subscribe there, you're going to get an alert every time we post trivia tidbits like news, photos, engravings of a Stegosaurus, all the classic stuff.
And we'll be back again soon with our next episode, 102, First Aid in Sudan in 1995 to 2000.
You sure will.
But in the meantime, a huge thank you to the judge himself. Thank you, Paul.
I'm not sure whether to accept your thanks after all of that.
Typical Khoratpithecus.
Yeah, no wonder he's self-grooming all the time. And that is it. I guess all that's left to say is...
I'm afraid that's all our time for today. So in my section of the podcast, I talked about some of the weird-looking species that roamed around Cambodia during the Neogene.
How could I forget?
Yeah, but look, anyway, while Dersley the Khoratpithecus might have been great, he wasn't giant. That was left for another ape, an ape called Gigantopithecus. This was another orangutan ancestor that lived around about the same time and was 10 feet tall.
Woo!
3 meters tall. Weighed in around 500 kilos. That's about twice the size of a modern gorilla and heavier than a grizzly bear.
Oh my lord.
But even Gigantopithecus would have looked small next to the true king of the jungle, the Stegadon.
Stegadon? God, tell me more.
This was a colossal elephant-like creature that dwarfed even today's biggest land mammals. It stood at 4 meters tall, that's 13 feet tall at the shoulder. It was nearly twice the size of a modern elephant. But it wasn't just like a one-hit wonder. There were fossils found of them all over Southeast Asia, and not just a few. In fact, paleontologists have found so many of the fossils that they consider that the Stegadon was the most successful and widespread large mammal of prehistoric Asia. But one of the biggest differences between the Stegadon and a modern elephant was its trunk. They couldn't grasp anything with it. It had basically no flexibility. It was just rigid.
Like a garden
hose. In fact,
hose.
it actually got in the way of them eating. So instead of like picking fruit from trees or ripping leaves from a branch, they had to put the plant in their mouth and chew on it. But one of the things that was awesome about Stegadon was that they loved to swim.
Well, they had a very good snorkel.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's what they used it for. Above the waves, they could breathe properly, and they could swim for literally thousands of kilometers, colonizing remote islands across Asia. Some of these were isolated on these islands, and over generations began to shrink due to limited food supplies and became kind of dwarf stegadons. So small, in fact, that they became no bigger than a cow.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you pop one in your pocket.
The fossils of some of these little mini stegadons were found on one island inside Komodo dragon poop, which means that for the first and probably only time in history, there was a species of elephant that was actively hunted by a reptile.
Wow. That's good stuff, Ryan. Nice.
So stick that in your trunk and smoke it. Freud would have loved the whole erect trunk thing, wouldn't he?
Oh, he wouldn't shut up about it. Well played, one and all. Hello, lovely YouTube folks. This is a special message just for you.
Yeah, thanks for listening all the way to the end.
Now, if you enjoyed the show, please let us know your thoughts in the comments below.
And don't forget to take a moment to hit that like and smash subscribe.
Hit that like.
Yeah.
Smash subscribe.
Yeah, it's what people say.
Do they, though?
Yeah, only the cool kids.
And you think you're the cool kids, do you?
No, we're the cool kids.
Oh, yeah, I suppose we are. All right, smash that like button, people. Smash it real good.
Oh, yeah. Nice.